This is Joel continuing on the subject of, shall we say, God is or just is, the isness of being. All being is. Nothing can be added to infinite being. Do you remember when the Master was asked about the commandments? And out of the 10 commandments, he selected one, the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. God, God, God. Thou shalt have no other God. What is God? As far as God can be explained, we think of God as power. And so the commandment is, thou shalt have no other power than God. That is, thou shalt not acknowledge that anything but God is power. Can you imagine if you could accept God as the only power, what a change would come into your life? I'll go along with you on that and confess that if I could accept God wholly and completely, if I could realize God wholly and completely as the only power on earth, that my life would be transformed also. God as the only power. Let's see, what are we fearing? Germs, infection, contagion. God is the only power. What difference now if there is infection, contagion, germs? Since with God being the only power, would these other things have any power? According to the Master, they would have no power except such power as was given them by God. Have you ever thought of germs, infection, contagion as being imbued only with qualities and activities of God? But what else could that mean? Have no other power but God. Do we feel lack or limitation? How could lack or limitation affect us if God were the only power? Do we fear wars? Now, there is really a belief of power, isn't there? Bullets, bombs bursting in air, they sing. Yeah, atomic bombs bursting in air. But according to the first commandment, only God is power. What would happen to the power of an atomic bomb if we could realize God as the only power? think on that pretty deeply, because there must come a moment of transition when we intellectually declare, well, that's right. If God is the only power, what have we to fear from all the so-called powers of earth and hell? There must be a moment of transition when we go from that intellectual agreement to that place of spiritual agreement that I spoke of on the other side of this recording. The place where a feeling takes place within you of agreement. Why, yes, that is the truth. I feel the truth of that one power. Thou shalt have no other God. God, we are told, is law. Now, that is a very astonishing statement. God is the only law. Because now I am going to face you with a startling statement. At least startling to me. It's a question. Is there a law of disease? Is there? Is there a law of disease? Thou shalt have no other law but God. Is there a law of disease? Then what is perpetuating disease? What is continuing disease? What is causing disease if there is no law of disease? Of course, we're told, in accordance with your faith, so be it unto you. Therefore, if you have faith in a law of disease, so it must be unto you. If you have belief, confidence, that there is a law of disease, so it must be unto you. But can you, at this moment, begin to feel somewhere deep down within you, not upstairs in your head, but can you somewhere deep down within you begin to feel an agreement, a feeling of God as the only law, the only being, the only cause? You see, the world is trying to remove disease through the study of the laws of disease. And there are no such laws. Right now I'm going to tell you a story written by Khalil Gibran. I don't think it's a funny story, but it has its sides. The story is of a priest walking along the country road and hearing a man cry out for help. And there he sees a man in the ditch, in pain, dirty, bleeding. And his first temptation is, of course, to go and help the man, and then fearing that the man may be a criminal, or that he may be dying and that he might be blamed for the death, he decides to walk on and ignore the man. But the man cries out again for help, cries out desperately in his hurt. And the priest turns back again to help, but this time fears that the man may be an escaped lunatic, and fearing him decides to walk on, when the man again cries out for help, that he's wounded, bleeding, dying. He's afraid of death. He's afraid of dying. The priest turns back and this time decides to help the man. But the man's face seems familiar, even though not in a very nice way. And the priest voices that thought, haven't I met you? Don't I know you? And the man says, why, yes, I'm your best friend. Best friend? I don't recognize you. Well, yes, I'm your best friend. I'm the devil. Oh, the priest then goes on at a great rate, berating the devil and asking only for the devil's death and wanting the devil's death. But the devil says, oh no, hold on. I'm your best friend. How would you make a living if I weren't alive? How do you get your pennies from the people except saying prayers to protect them against me? How does your church survive? How do they get money for these edifices except to overcome me? But supposing I were dead, what would you do then? And the story goes on that the priest took the man to his home and nursed him back to health again. Sounds strange, doesn't it? What would the church do if there weren't a devil? What need would there be of a church? Well, you know, when I read this story, the thought came to me, what need would there be of practitioners, metaphysical, spiritual practitioners, or teachers, if you could believe that God is the only power and the only law, and there is no power in sin, no power in disease, and no law of disease, nothing to cause it, nothing to perpetuate it. I thought perhaps I too would have to go back to work for a living, but I'm willing. I am perfectly willing to give up my ministry and go back to selling merchandise on the road, if only I could be assured that we, all of us, could, from this moment on, learn that we must never fear the devil, because he has no existence, never fear the power of a disease, because it has no law, no power whatsoever, according to the Master's teaching and the teaching of all spiritual wisdom, remember. Only one power, only one law, only one being. Think, because this is the point that I am leading up to. Think. There is nothing in all this world to pray for or against. There is nothing in all this world to use God power against. Since there is no devil, there is no power apart from God. There is no law apart from God. There is no law of sin, no law of disease. So no longer do we have to turn to God to overcome these, to help us rise above them, to destroy them or remove them. And that is the function of this teaching that I'm giving you today. This teaching which we may call is. Just the two letters, I-S, is, just as simple as our previous teaching, that which brought the infinite way into existence. Also a two-letter word, A-S, as. God expressed, manifest, as you and as me. God appearing as your being and my being. God appearing as, God manifest as this universe. No selfhood apart from God, since God appears as this universe. No condition apart from God, since God appears as the substance and activity of this universe. God appearing as, and doesn't that logically lead up to this? God is, and is all there is, and this is has neither good nor evil. This is has no point of comparison, since it always, eternally, immortally is what it is, and that is spirit. It isn't some degree of human good, nor is it some degree of human evil. It just is spiritually, harmoniously, joyously, eternally, infinitely, immortally is. Now just think. Law is, but not good law or bad law. No. The only law, which we call God. God is. Power is, not good power, not strong power, not bad power, not evil power. Just power, one power, that's all there is. Thou shalt have no other God, no other power. There's only one power. That power is. It doesn't oppose anything. No use praying to it to overcome your enemy. No use praying to it to overcome sin or sinful desires or appetites. No use praying to it to overcome disease, since there is only one power, and the power that is God. You see, the state of consciousness that we must be coming to now, after these years of the study of the infinite way, the state of consciousness to which we must be coming is a state of consciousness called is. Resting in that is. It is. Think of the dilemma of the church without a devil to preach against, to oppose, to protect from. And now think of our dilemma if we don't have to meditate or pray in order to get God to do something for us, since God good already is. Now here we come again to that subject of prayer. Do you feel a sense of agreement with this somewhere deep down within you? Do you have any responsive feeling that yes, how can God be used for any purpose? Against what would God be used? Against who? Why? Do you feel an inner response? Because that inner response is your prayer or treatment or communion. The words that I say to you as words will not do the work unless behind the words is a state of consciousness so clear that you feel the rightness of it, that you feel agreement with it, that you feel in tune with it. There is a Hebrew prayer in the Old Testament. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. O-N-E, one. And Mrs. Eddy, many, many years ago, so definitely saw the meaning of that she uses it as one of the bases of Christian Science, and repeats that prayer in her textbook and calls attention to the significance of it. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. One. With God as one, we have no opposite and no opposition. With God as one, we have only one activity, one being, one cause, one power, one law. It may take a day, a week, a month for you to learn this prayer of Hebrew Scripture and get the feel of its rightness. The feel of its rightness is prayer. The feel of its rightness is your communion with God. The feel of its rightness is your treatment. Now, it is legitimate to voice or give thought to, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." But it isn't sufficient. Somewhere deep within you must be that prayer as a continuing state of being until this feeling comes to you, this feeling of assurance comes to you, this feeling of agreement. Why, yes, the Lord is one. The Lord is one. There's no other power. There's no other being. There's no devil. There's no Satan. There's no opposition to the reign of God. There are no conflicting presences or powers. There are no conflicts within me at all, since my Lord is one. One. There's no conflict within me because of one. That one is. That one is. Yes, I can really see the day when there would be no need for churches, no need for metaphysical writings, no need for practitioners or teachers, since the only legitimate object these can have would be to reveal to you that the Lord our God is one, and that you need not fear death. You need not fear disaster. You need not fear sin or disease. The Lord our God is just one. One in being, one in essence, one in cause, one in effect, one infinite good. You see, what happens is you are led to a state of consciousness in which you do not even by suggestion think of turning to God to do something for you, since that which you are thinking of already is. You never come to the state of consciousness of a person praying for something or for somebody. Your whole prayer becomes that feeling of inner agreement. Is. It already is. Always has been. Before Abraham was, I am. Lo, I am with you to the end of the world. I will never leave you nor forsake you. You see? Is. Am. Is. I am with you. It is so. No more reaching up there mentally for some statement of truth. There is only one statement of truth. And it comes in one word. Is. It already is. I'm thinking just this minute of that statement that came to me many, many years ago, and I think you'll find it, yes, in the infinite way. That which I am seeking, I am. Do you see that again? Is. Is. It already is. I can give up seeking. I can give up searching. I can even give up praying. It already is. And now my prayer isn't praying anymore. My prayer is the realization, the recognition of is. Just think, whatever of good has come into your consciousness in the form of desire or hope, already is. There's no power to bring it to you tomorrow. Yes, you see, that question of time enters here. You can't live yesterday, can you? And so there is no good that can come into your experience yesterday. And so far as we know, no one has ever lived tomorrow. It just seems to be an impossibility, that thought of projecting ourselves into tomorrow. The spiritual literature of the world seems to be pretty well in agreement on the fact that now is the only time. That now is the only time we live. That now is the only time we ever will live. And for that reason, now just is the only time. Now you see, a prayer that would have to do with such a time as yesterday or last year or the last incarnation would be a waste of time, wouldn't it? Because you never will live in your last incarnation or even in your yesterday. You never will live an hour ago. So there's no use of praying for or about anything that concerned itself with an hour ago. Let's forget the past. Let the dead bury the dead. Let yesterday bury yesterday. Let this morning bury this morning. And let us concern ourselves with now. Oh, before we get to that, we may think of some desire, hope, or wish for tomorrow. But since we can't ever live tomorrow, our wish or desire or hope can't come true. There's only one time in which our prayers can materialize, and that time is now. It is for this reason that we must learn the instantaneity, the instantaneousness of healing, of reformation, since it can only take place now. Now. And what great fact do we discover now? Above all, we discover that I am. Just think. Now I am. I am now. And what is I am? Well, I'll leave that with you. One thing is certain, that if I am, all that the Father is and all that the Father has is right now in that I amness. Is that too deep? Can you follow this, that all that God is now? Can you follow this? All that the Father hath is now. All that the Father hath is mine now. All that the Father is, I am now. Do you follow that? Because if you do, you are again saying, well, that's just that is again. Yes, it's that is again. Not to be hoped for, not to be prayed for. Why not? Because in this now, there is only the one power, the one presence, the one law, which I am. All that God is, I am now. Do you see why the Master never prayed for anything, so far as we know, for himself? Can you understand why the Master never seems to have had a need? If it come to healing, he could heal multitudes. If it came to supply, he could take care of multitudes. At no point was he seeking to get. That is, of course, the significance of the three temptations. Was he tempted to believe in lack. It says he was an hungered, and he was tempted to turn the stones into bread. No, he recognized his fulfillment. He recognized his divine sonship. He recognized that all that the Father hath is mine now, and that I don't have to go about making it so. It already is. Get thee behind me, Satan. Get behind me, this temptation to believe that I can acquire something a minute from now, when in this nowness is my isness. It is now. I am. All that God is, I am. Well, here again we come to the subject of prayer. Do you feel the truth of this? It is this feeling of agreement that constitutes your prayer. If you can feel somewhere deep within you that right now I am in the midst of you, if you can feel somewhere deep down within you that all that ever will be is now, all that ever hath been is now, all that ever will be is now, for now is the only time. The divine harmony of God is your being now. Oh, don't judge by appearances, will you? Let's not judge by appearances. Let's not call something good and something bad. Withhold your judgment on that, and just stay with me on this. Spiritually is. Spiritually God is. Spiritually the one power is. The one law is. Spiritually, with spiritual discernment, I feel that all good is now. No, there's no use opening my eyes and looking at that cemetery across the street, because if I judge by appearances, the world is just full of skies that sit on mountains, of tracks that come together. Lots of those things are evident, but they're not true. They exist only as appearances. They exist only as temptations to keep us from crossing the ocean. How many thousands of years did that temptation keep people from crossing the ocean? Just because the sky seemed to be sitting on the water a few miles out at sea? And everybody believed the testimony of their senses and refused to travel until brave Christopher Columbus came along and said, no, I think that's an appearance, an illusion. I don't think the sky is sitting on that water at all. And so it is, in this spiritual wisdom, the reason that you can't discuss this with your friends or relatives, the reason that you can't explain this to your doctor, is that they live by appearances. Appearances is the very bread and butter of their daily living. Without appearances, they would have nothing to talk about. All of the conversation of humanhood is talk about appearances. And so there's no use of trying to reason this out, talk it out, or argue it out, or even try to sell this idea to your friends or relatives. Be still and know, but be very still. Be very still and know, spiritually know, that this is the truth. There's no law of disease. There's no devil. There's no power of harm. Spiritually, feel the rightness of this. If you feel it spiritually, you are praying aright rather than praying amiss. If you can feel the rightness of the one Lord, the one presence, the one power, nothing to overcome, nothing to destroy, nothing to remove. Why, I already am. It already is. God already is. Harmony already is. At this point, I remind you, your difficulty and my difficulty is that as we walk through the experience of everyday affairs, the temptation will continually arise to say good or bad, sick or well, rich or poor, lack or abundance, sin or purity. Continuously we are faced with not only the Master's 3 temptations. With us there are 3 million temptations. Always the temptation to look at the woman taken in adultery and throw a few stones of criticism, judgment, condemnation. To think of the thief caught in the act, about to be sentenced, and judge him, criticize him, call him bad. Oh, we are tempted from morning to night and night to morning to believe in appearances and to label them good and bad, label them right and wrong. And the temptation is terrific. But it must be resisted. We must learn to look at person, circumstance, condition, even disease, and withhold judgment. Just realize is, and then let the Father define that which is, and let the Father define, let the Father outline, let the Father show forth that which spiritually is. My kingdom is not of this world. There's no use trying to judge the spiritual kingdom from appearances. It will not work. Now, the study and the practice of the infinite way is a development of spiritual consciousness. It is not going through human existence, picking out all the wrong things and finding a system whereby we make them right. It is no such thing. It is looking through appearances of both human good and human evil and learning to behold the spiritual reality which always is, even where that appearance seems to be. Now you will understand better what our friend Lao Tse meant when he said, referring to God, if you could name it, it isn't that at all. And so, follow me closely in this, but relaxed. Don't strain now. Just relax. Anything that you could think about God would represent your concept of God, or a concept of God. Supposing you were to say, God is love. Now, God is love is a concept of God. It isn't God. And so praying to love would be praying to a concept. It wouldn't be praying to God. Supposing you had the idea that God is mind. That too is a concept of God and can't be God. And so you could go through any of the synonyms that you can recall and declare that God is that, and you would be wrong. That wouldn't be God at all. That would be a concept of God, and praying to it would just bring no results. Since any thought that you would think about God would represent an opinion, a theory, a concept, and not be God, how then are we, in the infinite way, to consider God? Actually, there's only one thing we know about God. God is. Of that you are as sure as I am. God is. Now, you may have no way of knowing whether God is mind or God is life or God is love. These may just be quotations. These represent ideas which some of our saints, sages, and seers formulated. And so they may be correct in their estimate of what God is, but regardless, you will admit that anything that you may say about God represents a theory, a belief, an opinion, or a concept except one thing, and that is, God is. That you know. God is. That's a pretty good prayer, too. Acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he will give thee rest. Acknowledge him. Acknowledge God is. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. On whom? God. The God that is. God is. That is enough to know. God is. Acknowledging that God is, what more can you do in the way of communion with God than that inner acknowledgement, that inner feel of rightness? Why, yes, that I know God is. All else may be speculation. All else may be my opinion or yours, or his or hers. But one thing no man can take away from me, no person, no book, no teaching can ever separate me from the realization that God is. As long as I acknowledge that God is and rest in some mysterious way, mysterious to the human senses, God will reveal to me all that I need to know about God. And so I have been leading up, slowly but surely, to this point. Do not be concerned with what anyone teaches about the nature of God. Do not be concerned with what anyone has written about God. Many of the things you read and study may appear right to you, appear correct. Many you may question. There is only one fact about which no doubt will ever enter your thought. There is just one fact in which you can feel in complete agreement, inner agreement. God is. And be satisfied with that until God reveals to you within your own being what God is and when God is and how God is. Let God reveal itself to you. I have had my own inner experiences with God, with the realization of God, with the actual feel of the presence of God. But I cannot make this real to you. To many of you, I could not even make you believe that I have had the experience. Since if you haven't had some measure of it, how can you possibly know whether I am telling the truth or whether I myself may not be fooled? I know, but I cannot convey that knowledge to you. One thing that I will not try to convince you of Because on this point you are already convinced, you are already in agreement, God is. And if you will willingly accept that isness of God, that inner realization, that inner point of agreement that God is, ponder it. Very, very soon, God will define itself to you. God will reveal itself to you. God will unfold and disclose itself to you, within you, in an original way. And with each experience will come some measure of what we call healing. You won't find health and wealth added to you. You will find that health and wealth have been included in you since before ever Abraham was. You will find that God, being the infinite nature of your being, all harmony, all good, is included in the infinitude of that one spiritual being. But this you will experience for yourself not by believing me, not by accepting my word. I only wish that by your believing me, spiritual wisdom and demonstration could come to you, but honestly, sincerely, frankly, it cannot be so. Spiritual experience can only come to you through your own experience. I can only tell you this, that if you can start without prejudice, without opinion, theory, concept of what God is, just start with the realization, of course, God is, that I know. God is, that I know. And dwell with that. Ponder it. Keep your thought in line with that until, out of the depths of your withinness, the experience will come revealing what God is and how God operates, how God acts in and through this marvelous universe. But all of that will be through your spiritual discernment. And your spiritual discernment will never come through just making agreeing statements with what others have written about God. Spiritual discernment will come with every God experience you have. And you can only have a God experience through voicing the truth. What is the only truth that you know? God is. That's all you know. That's all the spiritual wisdom you know. That's all you ever can know until God reveals more from within your own being. Surely the Hebrew said, the Lord is one. And you have a feeling of rightness about that. But that also is a restatement in another way of God is. We go on from there and say, oh yes, God is one power, one law. Well, you don't know that. You don't know that. You haven't yet had God reveal that to you within. Therefore, as far as you are concerned, the statement that God is one power and God is one law is a concept. To me, it isn't a concept any longer. It is a revealed truth because it was an experience that took place in my consciousness. But to you, that's just a statement that I am making or repeating. Only one thing do you know. God is. That you know. Now hug that to yourself. Live with it. Be satisfied with it until from the beginning of what you already know, what you already have in spiritual wisdom, will be added unto you the balance. To him that hath shall be given. Now you have this spiritual wisdom that God is. And by pondering it, meditating upon it, thinking upon it within your own being, there will be added unto you all the rest of who God is, what God is, how God is. The way will be made clear to you within your own being. You know, I have but one wish for the students of the Infinite Way, and that is not that they may accept what my experience in and with God has been, but that each one may themselves experience God, know God, feel God, love God, understand God, and finally realize Godhood. Aloha on a very beautiful day in Hawaii.